My story this week is a little bit of a cautionary tale. So,
Oh no.
yes, it's fine. Don't worry.
Okay.
Why don't you cast your minds back to January 7th, 2018? What were we all doing then?
I think I was in Devon.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Fantastic. Before I met you guys. So, January 7th, 2018. What happened then was an article was published in The Guardian, which isn't terribly surprising because articles are often published in The Guardian. It's kind of what you do. But this article in particular was...
Guys, you'll never believe it. The Guardian published an article.
The Guardian published an article. That's not shocking. The article was an excerpt from a book by a man named Johann Hari. Now, I'm probably just going to call him Harry from now on because it's easier for me.
Good old Harry?
Yeah. So, no, not good old
bad
Harry.
old Harry.
Bad old Harry. You'll
Oh,
find
dear.
out why. So, this article was called, I'm paraphrasing here, everything you think you know about depression is wrong. I'll just walk you through a little bit of the article.
Okay.
So, in this sort of excerpt from the book, he's talking about how he's kind of discovered things about depression that, that people don't really want you to know. He's made some sort of groundbreaking discoveries by speaking to some experts and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
For example, he talks about how with depression, basically what happens is, you get depressed, you go to see a doctor and they say, you're depressed. They give you a pill and you're on your way. Specifically, here's a slightly paraphrased quote just to make it slightly less, triggering. Now, if you suffer a tragedy at 10 a.m., your doctor can diagnose you with a mental illness at 10:01 a.m. and start drugging you straight away. That's a quote slightly altered. You can find the article linked in the description if you're watching this back. And another quote is, we act like human distress can be assessed solely on a checklist that can be separated out from our lives and labeled as brain diseases. If we start to take people's actual lives into account when we treat depression and anxiety, it would require an entire system overhaul. Now, I don't know about you guys. I personally have dealt with the NHS in terms of depression. And basically everything he's saying in this article is not true. So his whole point is that basically doctors will just prescribe you antibiotics, prescribe you antidepressants if you go to them with sort of some symptoms of depression, and they'll do it straight away like that. And the fact that he thinks that they're kind of hiding that depression isn't just a chemical imbalance in your brain, that other things in your life can cause you depression, like horrible events, grief, things like that. Now, he took antidepressants and they didn't work for him. And kind of this article is kind of saying, hey, antidepressants aren't necessarily the cure for depression. You could just be depressed because of something else in your life, and just taking antidepressants, it's not going to work. It's very sort of medicine here. Now, basically everything he said in this article was wrong. Almost
Objectively.
Like actually objectively. So, for example, I just did a little test with the NHS just to check it out. There is sort of a quiz, a questionnaire that the NHS gives you, a depression and anxiety test. Now, I did one today, and I filled it out not correctly. I just went for the worst things, and I also chose the options, because there are options on this, for saying that there are bad things happening in my life, just to see if Harry's sort of idea of our medical system would hold up. And when I went through the NHS system, it told me, okay, you can go see a doctor. You seem to have symptoms of depression. You should make an appointment with your GP and they can tell you. But also, it seems that you've got some stress going on in your life. So here's an NHS page on stress and what you can do to alleviate that stress. Yeah, and I know for a fact that this has been around since before this article was published.
Yeah.
So, no, the NHS doesn't just shove you straight onto antidepressants, and they don't sort of give you no other option, for dealing with things in your life. In fact, therapy is one of the major sort of treatments of depression and other mood disorders, and that can directly sort of that can directly deal with things that are happening in your life. Basically, what this article talks about is something, it basically presents an idea that isn't true about our medical system. And so a man named Dean Burnett wrote a response also in The Guardian. So he's a neuroscientist and he was a lecturer at the time. And this is basically how I found out about the story, because I saw him tweeting about it. It was, I think, 2 or 3, he was tweeting about his 3-year anniversary with basically getting into a tiff with this guy. So Dean Burnett wrote a response in The Guardian. And he essentially laid out every single way that Harry's article was wrong. Basically going over similar points to what I've gone over, specifically taking out excerpts from the article and saying, well, actually, in my experience as a neuroscientist and a psychiatry lecturer, that's not true. These things that you're saying that the field or the people practicing in the field don't want people to know, these are widely accepted and dealt with constantly. Now, Dean Burnett's article isn't exactly the point that I want to touch on here. It's not the main sort of thing that I want to talk about. I want to kind of talk about Dean's story, but to trying to get that article published. Now, he had a regular sort of column in The Guardian, as far as I'm aware, and his editor was really pushing back against him publishing his response to Harry, because it basically tore into Harry. Harry had been in a scandal, like a plagiarism scandal, before his article came out. And this article that he sort of published was kind of his comeback. So Dean was basically saying, look, Harry's article is bad. Harry has been basically he's had this whole thing with plagiarism before. We shouldn't really trust him on this, and we shouldn't really trust him on anything. And it was really difficult for him to get that published. And the reason being that Harry was apparently old uni mates with a lot of people that were working in The Guardian. A lot of people said, "Oh yeah, look, Harry's done this, but he's a good guy. Oh, you don't want to get into a thing with Harry. Like he may seem harsh, but he's pretty sound. So he faced a lot of Dean faced a lot of that trying to get his article out. Anyway, he ended up getting it out, and Harry then wrote a response on his blog or his personal website, basically getting quite mad at Dean's response to his article. And it then came about that The Guardian just straight up put a link to Harry's response at the end of Dean's article, driving traffic from the article, sort of disparaging the misinformation, sending a link straight to Harry where they can get more misinformation. So Dean went in and took that off, and there was a lot of back and forth, basically. The higher-ups at The Guardian trying to get Harry's sort of misinformation to be on equal footing with an actual sort of professional in the field, an expert. And essentially what ended up happening was Dean wrote another article or two, and there was a bit of a tiff between him and Harry. But ultimately Dean ended up kind of getting his way, even though he had to fight for it quite a lot. And basically what I want to tell you about here, the reason that I've told you this sort of short, almost rambly story is this. When you're reading newspapers like The Guardian, like the BBC, we've done an episode on how the BBC is biased already. We've done a segment on that. When you're reading these articles about science, you need to be very careful about what you believe, because some people read the article from Harry and thought, oh wow, I shouldn't be taking antidepressants for my depression.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys know, if you stop antidepressants like that, it can make depression come back, but worse.
Worse, right?
Yeah, it can genuinely make it worse, because basically your brain gets used to the chemistry with the antidepressants, and if you suddenly stop that, it's a very bad thing to do. So there were actual real world consequences to this article that was published, and you need to be very, very careful at the information that you take in. You shouldn't just trust something because it comes from a source that you think seems reputable, like the BBC or the Guardian. Yes, that should be more trustworthy than seeing it on Facebook, but it's also important to consider who is telling you that information. You can generally trust what we say on SCI GUYS, I would say, because we source everything that we say. We take what we say generally from experts. We point out when we're talking about conjecture or what we think. And so if you pay attention and you're smart about what you're believing and what you're taking in, you can discern what is fact from what is opinion. And that's the thing that with sort of newspapers, I feel like people genuinely will read and believe whatever they read. And that's something that I think we should all be very careful of, because newspapers will just publish things if someone that works there is mates with someone that wants to write for them. There is a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily pay attention to. There's a lot of factors that can influence things being given to us by certain publications. So yeah, basically just be careful about what you read. Make sure that if you're going to take any information from any kind of article that isn't, say, a science journal, be very sure about who has written it and what their credentials are. Because in this instance, we had essentially just a guy writing an article on depression, and The Guardian almost tried to suppress a response from a trained and experienced neuroscientist. So essentially what I'm saying is the world is not a great place for finding good information. So make sure you find it in good places.
Yeah.
You know, that's basically all it is. I think that's my story for this week.
There's lots of wrong information out there. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but this sounds like weirdly familiar to a lot of like articles about trans people I've read in the past couple of years, being like, being trans is an all down to gender dysphoria. They're just trying to like get you through onto hormones. They're trying to like express you through onto medication straight away. You know, a lot of it's to do with this new gender ideology, and I've seen a lot of articles along the lines of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I have actually I have spoken about before, I think, the similarity between the similarities between the sort of NHS response to mental health issues and trans people, in that there are massively long waiting lists for both. The obviously far worse if you want to get onto hormones and whatnot, but there are huge waiting lists for both, and there's really not the funding or the resources there to deal with all the people that need to use the service, and so it just ends up with people being basically left to fend for themselves or go private, and it really is absolutely horrible. I mean, you see this with the pandemic where the government keeps on saying, "Oh, well, so we may need to end a lockdown because people are sad because lockdown makes people depressed." Yeah, but part of a pandemic response, having an appropriate pandemic response is having an appropriate response to the mental health issues that are going to come about through a pandemic. It's not all physical health and people getting COVID. It's people getting depressed because of the depression of a pandemic. So yeah, I just think that there are many areas that our health system could really improve upon.
Less misinformation would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a little more facts.
Just learn to spot it.
Look, what are you thinking? You look like you got some thoughts in your head, bounce around your noggin.
I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is that while I agree with your analysis, I trust your analysis that this person was saying something untrue. I do take issue with the idea that the depression is purely a medical chemical problem.
Oh, goodness me. Sorry, I should. I do want to point out that so when he was saying that, any sort of things in your life could cause you depression, I want to be clear. Yeah, things in your life can cause you depression. And I wasn't saying that wasn't true.
Yeah.
But what isn't true about what he was saying is that the medical field knows that and is aware of that. If you like what I'm saying, if you go onto the NHS website, you do that thing, there is literally a question about what is going on in your life. Depression can be caused by any number of life events. You can have sort of chronic depression through chemical imbalances in your brain. You can have depression brought on by a sudden change in your life, or depression brought on by grief. It could be caused by a number of different things, and it's not all. It isn't all exactly the same, and that is absolutely accepted. That is absolutely true. But the misinformation that Harry's article was pushing was that is not the view of the medical industry. That is not the information that you receive if you go to the NHS, say, which it absolutely is the information that you receive when you go to the NHS.
Yeah.
It absolutely is the information you receive from your doctor.
It's almost like implying that the NHS hasn't considered this at all.
Yeah. And another point I do want to just clarify as well is that I said that antidepressants do work. Now, antidepressants work for some people. Antidepressants don't work for other people. I'm sure that if Johann Hari he went on antidepressants, he was on antidepressants, and then he decided to stop them because they didn't work for him.
Yeah.
Now, that's perfectly normal. And if you are given antidepressants, unless your doctor isn't doing their job right, they'll tell you that there's some trial and error here. You gotta go through a few, and if none of them work for you, then none of them work for you. I think, similar in a sense to birth control. If you're on birth control, you don't just get, oh, there's the pill, that's you sorted.
Yeah.
Some of them work differently for different people, and if they don't work for you, then they don't work for you. But they are there as an option, and they shouldn't be viewed as being lesser or unhealthy or awful, because they can be really helpful for some people. I think the danger is convincing people who are on antidepressants and who they are actually helping that those antidepressants aren't helping them at all and are actually making them worse. Because for some people that is the case, but for others it genuinely isn't. So thanks, Luke, for bringing that up.
That's a good catch.
Yeah, good one. Yeah. Anything else?
All right.
Anything else? Any other gross mistakes that I have made or missed?
No, I didn't think that was a gross mistake. I didn't think it was your
No,
mistake either.
no.
I thought it was like a thing that needed said was just. I just find it very sad that if we take something like depression could be considered a pandemic. It could be considered a thing that is sweeping through the world and through our countries and cities, and it doesn't affect everyone, but it affects enough people that should be taken seriously. And the fact that the fact that loads of people are feeling really sad is then, in terms of how our society responds to that, is pretty much it just goes, this is a medical problem that can be fixed by giving people by giving people pills that will do this with their serotonin receptors, and by giving them therapy, rather than go, maybe there's a systemic thing going on here. Maybe there's like, we're increasingly isolated. The world is so unpredictable, etc., etc. And there are other reasons why we might be feeling so like strained against the world.
Well, that does.
Yeah.
That does remind me of Jamp's story from a few weeks ago. Do you remember the story that you did about the sort of money versus therapy?
Oh, about income and therapy.
Yeah. And to be fair, look, the NHS, the response to depression isn't perfect. I'm not saying that it is, but the sort of the idea that the idea that the medical sort of industry is pushing the sort of the idea that the medical industry just wants to push the fact that depression is just a chemical imbalance, that's just not true.
I just think that loads of people being sad should be not just the responsibility of the NHS. It should be the responsibility of the country and of the way it's run, and not just like, oh, we'll let the NHS deal with that. It's like suggesting that rising rates of lung cancer are because the NHS isn't doing enough to cure people's lung cancer. It's like, well, no, maybe these people who are selling cigarettes might have something to do with it.
Nah, mate.
No. Oh, the cancer unit is underfunded, and that's the problem.
Well, it's like saying, oh, well, the reason that there's so much crime is because we need to give more money to the police. No, stop giving money to
police is underfunded.
It's like, oh, there are lots of stabbings of black children in this poor area. What should we do? Give more money to the police to police them? No, give them something to do other than join a bloody gang, man. Jeez. Like, you can't throw the police at every problem or throw the NHS at every problem and expect it to be fixed.
If we send enough, it'll work one day.
But they're not giving money to the NHS as well. They're cutting money to the NHS and saying, fix our problems, please.
Please.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not,
remit of the NHS
continue
is
to
just
underdeliver, then we're going to cut even more money.
Well, it's clearly not working. If you enjoyed that clip, head over to patreon.com/SCI Guys, where you can find the full show. Or you can stay here and catch up on old SCI Guys episodes. Or you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at SCI Guys Pod to find out when we're doing more live shows.